Georgie here at RSPB Hope Farm, manager of this amazing place, and it is a real pleasure to be here to celebrate our 20th anniversary. It's autumn, so there's loads to see. We've got blackberries filling the hedgerows as well as the slowberries getting going. We've got crops freshly drilled. There's a linnet flock that is starting to get together amongst a few other things. We've still got a few butterflies about and a few bees as well. And there's some winter bird seed mixes right behind me at the bottom of this field which are in full flower. So loads going on, and it is a real shame that we can't have you all over here so that you can see it in person. But making the most of the current situation, we thought, oh hey, we're going to run a virtual tour. We're going to show you all of these things that we're doing at the farm at the moment, what's going on now. But the beauty of it being a virtual tour is you can sit in the comfort of your living room or wherever you want to be. And we can also have a look at some of the other exciting things that we get going on throughout the year as well. Thanks to your support over the last 20 years. So thank you and enjoy the ride. Right, so I've just come along to one of our hedgerows at Hope Farm. We have about 7 miles of these, all shapes and sizes. So we've got some of these ones that stand sort of about 3 metres in height. We've got some over there that are just freshly laid last year, so sitting about waist height at the moment, but still nice and thick from the bottom. Some have got lots of brambles, so really thick vegetation at the bottom. Some are much more tall, sort of tree-like structures. And the aim of these hedgerows is to just create as much diversity as we can. They're amazing structures, aside from helping with wind protection, sequestering carbon, and there's quite a lot of research to show their uses for that as well. They are amazing resources for wildlife, and that's the main reason that we keep them on the farm. So when we bought the farm, these photos are from 1999 in the winter, and they were a little bit gappy, and standing sort of about 1.5 metres in height on this particular piece of hedge. Yeah, a few gaps, about 1 metre wide, and you can see through them quite clearly, and you can see the trunks along the bottom as well, with little vegetation along the bottom. That edge shot shows that off quite well there. And then fast forward, it's a little bit skewed because this is in the middle of the summer, but this is the same hedge that stands well over 2 metres in height, probably nearer 3 metres, and the poplar trees have just been allowed to grow. But that's about 5 metres in width. We planted up the gappier areas. Haven't actually worried too much about trimming the ditch as well, because it still serves just as well with drainage with that vegetation over the top. We manage these on a 3-year rotation, or at least, so some hedgerows don't actually need cutting even that often. We just let them get really scruffy and try and let some grow up tall, some short, because there is research to also show that different birds, they nest in different kind of hedgerows. So yellowhammers, they like the sort of shorter, scrubbier, stout hedgerows. Turtle doves, they like the big, tall, sort of 4 metres high, scrubby hedgerows. And then things like greenfinches, they like ones with lots of trees in them. That we find those more around our paddocks, nearer towards the village. The way that we kind of look at them is that they can be a vertical wildflower margin. If you have the blooming sequence that goes right from sort of the catkins in February, blackthorn, then the hawthorn in May, and then all the way through to now where we have lots of bramble in flower and producing berries as well. Dog rose as well, and goat willow, loads of other things that we try and just make sure that they can provide pollinator resource. So just having a little look here at the monitoring results. For yellowhammer, I picked as a species, looking at the difference in number of territories along the hedgerows between 2000 and 2017. So in 2000 here, this is where the hedgerow is that I've taken that drone footage of, and then we have the old video, and we've got
2 territories along there in 2000. Then we've got nothing along this part here along the top. And then this is the more sort of brambly hedge where we have one larger territory there and then a few things dotted around. So there are yellowhammers using the space, but still not nearly as many as there could be. So you have to look at 2017 on 2 pages. So this is the south end of the farm where we have a territory along that hedge that was part of the drone footage that I showed you, 2 territories along here, and then on that south side, along that bramble hedge, where we have that mixture of hawthorn and bramble for safe nesting, food, margins either side, yellowhammer using all along that, so it makes a real difference.
So we've just stopped off at one of our newly drilled Pollinator mixes. It's not the most diverse at the moment. It's mostly borage and phacelia, and then you've got some smaller clover plants that are just in the undergrowth waiting to get going, because this borage is probably the quickest plant to get going. But it just shows how important these pollinator resources are throughout the whole year. So not just in the warm months when we all want to be sat outside, but all the way through till September, when we've got these queen bees and honeybees still looking for food. If I can just get this in here, you can have a little look for yourself. Here's a bumblebee, nice and busy. And I think within, I don't know, a couple of metres, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's about 7 bumblebees and honeybees here already. So loads going on, and these resources are really important for the farm as well, not just because we need to look after diversity as a responsibility, but because these pollinators are really helpful for us to grow things like beans, oilseed rape, and they also provide resources for things that help predate on the pest insects as well. So it's all about boosting those ecosystem services to help us grow the crops for the long term.
So that was what those margins are looking like at the moment, but here are just a few clips of what the flower margins have looked like earlier on in the year. So this was back in July time, and it just shows off what we're trying to achieve. That was a margin at the beginning of its life, and this is it when it's in full swing. And we try to just create a real diversity of flowers across the farm and within a margin if we can, so that we have flowering resources right from the beginning with the cowslips that we had in this margin, all the way through to the knapweed. Then we've got chicory flowering at the moment, birdsfoot trefoil flowers till late on in the season as well. You've got the cow parsley there, and this is just an aerial shot to show how we try and connect them across the landscape. Rob may have already talked about this research project we've got going on at the moment, which is actually looking at trying to connect these habitats, not just by joining them up around the edges of the fields with flower margins, but across the fields as well. So you can see that flower margin that's just emerging at the top of the screen there, that branches all the way across the field. So that in that field at the moment, there isn't anywhere across that whole bean crop that is further than 50 metres away from a wildflower margin. So that's 50 metres away from a home for beneficial insects like the ground beetles that help predate on slugs, hoverflies that help predate on aphids. So by growing these kind of habitats that are almost like the old style wildflower meadows across the whole farm, we're increasing these ecosystem services provided by all these insects, and actually trying to reduce our reliance on pesticides at the same time. We haven't used insecticides since 2018, and these kind of management practices alongside the provision of these habitats means that our insects are still thriving and our butterfly index is still increasing to the 400% above what it was in 2000 when we first purchased the farm.
We've just about finished our spring drilling campaign and got on top of that. Now our attention turns to these habitat areas. So on many fields we're taking out the odd-shaped corners and pieces of field. This was a winter birdseed mix sown last spring to deliver winter birdseed over last winter. And the birds really enjoyed it and actually stripped it. So then we cultivate these up and get them ready for planting in a few weeks' time to deliver seed source for next winter. And we have these as a network across the farm, and we can tailor our different what we plant in here to deliver seed source for different species. So we identify the species we have on our farms, and then we can feed them accordingly. So these just get lightly cultivated with a set of discs, and then they get worked down a little bit. Try and encourage some weeds to grow before we plant, and then we plant the winter birdseed mix in here.
So this is an aerial view of one of our winter birdseed mixes, and this is about 3 weeks after drilling, so this will be at the end of June. We drilled the seed mixes in the middle of June this year, just waiting for that bit of wet weather that we got in the summer so that the seeds had the chance to establish. And this is a few weeks ago now, so this is a seed mix that is about getting on for about 3 months old. And you can see it's just shot up. That's some fodder radish we've got there. You can see the mustard, you've got gold of pleasure, linseed, buckwheat, and there are all sorts of other things in there as well. Quinoa, phacelia, sunflowers, and the whole, there's the quinoa there. And the whole idea of this is to create a diversity of plants that provide a diversity of different seeds, and that means that we are going to provide for our diversity, the greatest diversity we can of birds. There's a sunflower there and a phacelia right next door to it. These are mostly broadleaf plants, so a mix like this means that we could control for grass weeds if we need to, and we treat these areas as if they're a crop, so grow them on a rotation, just as we would with the crops that we grow to harvest. So you've got this other mix here, which you can see it looks very different. This is a cereal-based mix. It's an area where we had quite bad thistle problems last year. You can see there's still some yellow thistles popping up. And this is actually the same area that Martin showed you cultivating on. And we're really pleased. We've got some triticale there, millet, linseed, and some barley that's grown up as well. So those cereal crops, they should provide for things like yellow hammers and corn buntings, whilst the millet is actually quite good for tree sparrows and smaller seed-eating birds.
The only issue with the winter bird seed mixes is that because there is such a small acreage of them in the landscape, as opposed to the need over winter, they become really depleted by about December time. And although they still have the standing structures and a few bits of seed food, from December through till April, it gets really cold and really tricky for species to survive. And we call that the hungry gap. So instead what we do to keep those birds going and come into spring in good enough breeding condition, to keep the population going, we scatter seed every week in those quantities, and they are by far the best places to go bird spotting for winter farmland birds. You can see we've got reed bunting feeding off them, goldfinches, yellow hammers, chaffinch, and tree sparrow are quite often seen as well. And you just get these huge flocks that are really struggling to find food in the wider landscape, but that do really well at Hope Farm and other farms where they have this practice going on. We're paid through Countryside Stewardship, as we are with a lot of the other options, and it is actually really easy to do. You can mix up your sacks for weeks in advance, just keep it out of the way of any potential rodents, and yeah, it's a really, really rewarding thing to do, is keep birds fed over winter so that they can go into good breeding condition come spring. So we have winter bird surveys that we conduct every year on the farm, and this means that we can look at the distribution of different bird species against the habitats that are in place. And so we've got the linnet hotspots where the big blobs are lots of linnets, smaller blobs, less linnets, and you've got the overwinter stubble in purple, and the blue, yellow and green areas are different kinds of winter bird seed mixes with different plants. And you can see we've got these big blob areas, that's where supplementary feeding was going on. So in that year, the seed resources available in the supplementary feed were really important for linnets. And then we move on to the yellowhammers, lots more yellowhammers spotted. And they are in small numbers around the farm along the hedgerows, showing that there is food for them there, or shelter. Loads of yellowhammers using that overwinter stubble, which kind of reflects the more traditional habitat which you might find yellowhammers to feed on. Some using the supplementary feed areas, and some using the overwinter winter seed mixes as well. So that's quite interesting to see. And then we move on to the reed buntings, and you can see loads of reed buntings using that winter bird seed mixes, a few using the supplementary feed areas, and quite a few using the overwinter stubble areas as well. So all in all, across those three, what should be common seed-eating bird species, or ones that eat seed food over winter at least, it just shows how important providing that food is for them to survive, because that is where you find the majority of them on the farm. Turtle doves are one of the species that are really struggling in the UK, but should be abundant on farmland, having declined over 95% in the last 25 years. And they are a species that still hasn't held a territory on the farm in the last 10 years. So we are taking part in this project run by Operation Turtle Dove, which a few other farms are participating in as well, to look at ways of providing different seed food. Because the turtle doves, unlike a lot of other farmland species, they feed on seed all year round, and they actually produce a milk to feed their chicks with from the seed. So they need ready access to water, and they need big, thick, scrubby hedge habitat to nest in as well. So we chose this location as we've got a reservoir nearby, and we've got big scrubby hedge vegetation to trial lots of different mixes established at different times over 2 years, that started in the autumn of 2018. So the beauty of having a virtual tour is that we can go back to that time and have a little look at what we did to get the seed mixes established, and how it went along the way. So here's just a photo, although I've got some videos later on of actually like when we were doing the work. But this just shows the plots that we marked out, cultivated to get a fine seed bed. We then allowed some weeds to chit, and spread the seed on the autumn sown plots. And from there we just had to wait through the winter, and then we'd revisit the spring sown plots, as you can see here, to cultivate them again, and get that fine seed bed established, because there was lots of chickweed that had grown up over winter, to put the spring sown seeds in, or just leave them cultivated to see what would come up there as well.
Morning, here again at Hope Farm. So I thought I'd chat a little bit today about what we're doing for turtle doves on the farm. So we've got lots of big hedgy scrubby habitat like I've got behind me here. We've got a reservoir over in that direction, and then we're also trialling lots of different ways of growing seed food. So this right here is a spring sown plot, and then we've got autumn sown plots over in that direction, and then around these plots we've got what looks like a right mess here, but that's lots of chickweed, so that is going to provide seed food now and for the next few weeks, amongst things like your speedwells, and we've got in the trial plots fumitory, scarlet pimpernel, clovers as well, that should provide seed food. Because these seeds are quite hard to grow on this kind of heavy soil, we have also got other means of making sure the seed food is provided. So I've just stuck out some food from the bag. Really simple to do. Here, if you can see it, we've got wheat, oilseed rape, red and white millet, and then we've got some sunflower hearts as well, so quite a bespoke mix for what we know turtle doves like. We know that they're around this area and they can forage up to 5 kilometres away from their nest, so hopefully we will hear some purring this season. But obviously we're right on the edge of their range in the UK, so if we do get them, we'll be very lucky. Yeah. Right, so we're just here at Hope Farm, joining with the climate strike, and we've got Bernard here with the truck, and we're just literally collecting up lots of bristly ox tongue that's been growing on these turtle dove plots over the summer that we've sprayed off, cut, and we're just raking up all of the bits of remnants so that we're not getting that nutrient build up in the soil. And all these different plots, they've grown reasonably well, so we've got a bit of clover here. It looks really patchy at the moment because we've just been raking it, and a little bit more there. And then on other plots we've got some knapweeds, some red campion, and they're all just sort of dying down as autumn's drawing in. But just thank you to everyone who's helped us today. We've got Lorinda, Emma from the Turtle Dove Project, Tony from Conscience. Real team effort. So I'm just out here on the turtle dove experimental plots at Hope Farm, and we've got a combination of about 10 different treatments with 5 different mixes and cultivated areas and different established times of spring last year and autumn the year before. And you can see they're really different. So over on the left here we've got a wildflower experimental mix, and so turtle doves, they need to have at least 20% bare ground and vegetation about half the height of this. So early on this was fantastic, but it's just grown up too high for them now. You've got the highest 6 kilograms a hectare, then 3 kilograms a hectare there, which is still a bit high. Over at the far corner, if I can zoom in here, that is a cultivated area for arable plants, and that is unfortunately mostly bristly ox tongue. So perhaps might be better suited to other areas, but not this part of the farm, or this heavy clay soils. This one's been mown in strips as we would under standard management for a pollen and nectar hyacinth mix, and we've got some clovers in here. It does all look really messy, but that's what turtle doves like. So yeah, we've got some clovers providing seed resources and plenty of bare ground so that turtle doves can access the food. And then we've got similar, you can probably see the stripes over there as well. And that was the spring established, and this is the autumn established mixes. I'll be honest, I can't remember what this one is here, but it is mostly overrun with bristly ox tongue again, to be honest. So loads of different stuff going on. Right, so it's 7 in the morning and sun is shining. Sunrise about an hour ago, getting on towards middle of September now, and I am just about to take part in the partridge count. Excited for what we'll see out there. We've got some bird covers, some cover crops, some stubble that's still just about intact. Just had a slight tickle on the surface after putting down some organic matter, some chicken manure, which I can smell quite well at the moment. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what we've got out there, see what different habitats they're using, and then submit our count later on to Game and Wildlife. Some of these guys have gone the other side.